History and heroes. Here at Flemington they stand forever. Eternal reminders of beauty, of greatness, of legend.
But a champion becomes a legend!
The unequalled champion.
Bath's won the cup.
The unmatched master.
Yes, sure. Got to start looking for next year now.
This is where these heroes made history. This is their turf. And this week, there's no other place in Australia like it. Fabulous Flemington. Luscious lawns, glorious grandstands. It's a playground for grown-ups. And around here, fashion comes first, second, and third. It's Celebrity Central, a marquee melting pot of punters and partygoers, A-listers, influencers, selfie snappers, you won't know where to look. And when it comes to the real stars, this is their stage. The most famous racecourse in the country. Because when it's all said and done, Flemington belongs to the heroes.
Mowing them down outside.
The first lady to win the Melbourne Cup.
And the history makers. These beautiful animals.
You're on.
These brave athletes. And the masterminds behind their campaigns.
History in Flemington.
4 days of unrivaled racing from every angle. Unprecedented access. The nation will stop again for the $8 million Lexus Melbourne Cup.
Running in the Melbourne Cup.
It's a week of celebration. Here in the shadow of legends, more history awaits. More heroes will emerge.
Hello and a very warm welcome to the Melbourne Cup preview show, and it really is Christmas Day if you are a punter or if you are a race fan. What a fantastic event we have later on coming our way, and what looks like a really open event this year. Helping me through this Melbourne Cup preview show is two of the best. We're joined by Jason Tan and the birthday boy Aidan Rodley. Happy birthday from both Jason and I.
Well, thanks very much, Emily. It's Melbourne Cup Day. Every day's a birthday, Melbourne Cup Day, isn't it? I'm rapt to be here, and obviously it's the race that gets me going, you know. It's the race that got me into racing, and I'm delighted to be part of the Form Preview Show.
There'll be a lot of numbers discussed, not just Aidan's new number, but the numbers around the Melbourne Cup of 2019. And you see the opener there, and very much an Australian-centric race to begin with. And as we've discussed over the last 15 and 20 years, more and more internationalised. That's what they've wanted it to become, and it really is the case now, to the extent where the Australian influence has turned into sourcing horses to compete in the Cup from Europe primarily. We've got a Japanese horse that's going to be amongst the favourites. We've got a New Zealand bred horse that's going to be amongst the favourites, and a plethora of horses from the UK and Ireland that are going to be trying to stake their claim and win a thick end of 7.5 million Australian. It's pretty huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really adds a different dimension to the form as well, because it's so hard for us on this side of the world to be able to measure up how they've travelled and how they're going to be competition-wise against our Australian and New Zealand breds. Hopefully you've seen a little bit of a promotion that we've had on during the week, a Facebook promotion with $2,000 worth of free bets. That's $500 through Jason, Aidan, myself and the Shark for our top pick in the Melbourne Cup, and the winners have been picked, and we'll be revealing those a little bit later on in the show. Let's have a little look at the weather and track conditions as well, coming from Flemington. Obviously, boys, we've seen a fair amount of rain during the week at Melbourne. High of 19, low of 8, mostly fine northwesterlies, soft 6. That's really crucial, isn't it?
All the updates that we've been receiving the last 48 hours is that the track that presented on Derby Day Saturday, the first of 4 days of the carnival, be pretty similar to that because of the rain that's held it at that position, Aidan?
Absolutely. We saw rain, like, torrential rain last year. It was a bit of rain the year before. But Flemington plays so well, and it will play really well throughout the day as well. I think slow six, the Europeans will be saying, oh, this is like a dead track. It's not like a slow track back home either. So it's not. I think the track will, as always, be in terrific order.
I think it'll certainly help the Europeans. That little bit of cut out of the track seems to be what they enjoy. Let's get straight into it and have a look at the market for the Melbourne Cup. There it is, the 11 Finch, Jason, is the favourite.
And Murder Glass, the Japanese runner, at $8.50. Strong support for both of them across the Tasman. Cross counter, last year's winner, is currently $13. Southern France, Hunting Horn, $23 and $41. Prince of Aran, who raced last year as a Prince of Aran, or a Prince of Aran, is $18 and plenty liking the chances of him. So that's the first 12 in the Lexus Melbourne Cup of 2019. Other runners of interest, Downdraft and Magic Wand are at 18 each. Sound, raced last year as Sound Check, is at 80 to 1. Constantinople, plenty wanting to back it. Joe Moreira, the Brazilian who's riding in Hong Kong, will take the saddle. The Chosen One, the only New Zealand trained runner in the race, is at 40 to 1. Voundeclair at 10 to 1. Young Star at $31, betting on option 1262. Emily, heaps of ways to have a bet this year. Obviously, you can go into your local TAB, you can go to Wingatui or Ellerslie, where we have live racing. There's the TAB app, which is easy to download, and of course the website.
Sure is. So many ways to get involved in the races today, and Thad's going to be joining us now. And Thad, where has the money been? What have we been enjoying with regards to the Melbourne Cup?
Yeah, I guess the story, good morning Emily, good morning to you Jason and Aidan. I guess the story really has been the shortening of Finch into favouritism. When we opened this market on Saturday night, Emily, the Japanese runner Murder Glass was a clear favourite in the race at around 6.5, and look, you can understand on what we saw in the Caulfield Cup around Murder Glass. Then the other Japanese wonder horse, Legris comes out and wins a Cox Plate. There was a lot of fervour around the Japanese runners, but that's just been tempered a little bit by the fact that they think Murder Glass may not get a strong 2 miles at Flemington. We've seen Murder Glass ease out. We've seen Finch come in, and we've also seen a move through a few others at odds. Twilight Payment for Joseph O'Brien's been 81 into 41. Surprise Baby's been 18 into 14. There was good money for Magic Wand, Aidan O'Brien, Ryan Moore. Yesterday afternoon, we've seen that shorten up from around 26 into 18, Magic Wand, and also the other Aidan O'Brien trained runner, Il Paradiso, 18 into 14. So there's plenty of movement in this market, Emily. We've got some big bets there on the screen. Constantinople, we've had 5,000 at 850. That price hasn't budged since we've opened, really, and another 1,000. Obviously, looking down the page in the futures markets, a couple of bets of interest here. Probably 500 on Vow and Declare at 100 to 1 sticks out there. That was before the Caulfield Cup run, so 50,000 for that lucky customer. The other one there, Murder Glass, 2 bets of 500 at 30 to 1, as well as a couple of other bets, 2,000 and 1,000 at $10. Here's a nice little multi. There's a couple of doubles up the top, but the one I want to highlight there, $20. Nice little green voucher. Caulfield Cup, Murder Glass, Legris and the Cox Plate at 440, and Surprise Baby. Your $20 could be 6,000 if the Australian or the New Zealand bred runner, we'll say, by shocking. Probably one of the only sort of Australasian bred hopes in the race can win the Melbourne Cup. 20 into 6,000. So that's not too bad, guys.
Thanks, Thad. Some really intriguing stuff there. And of course, there are going to be a whole number of specials throughout the program that we'll be bringing to you. So keep your eyes peeled for those. We're going to move on, Thad, and say a very big thank you to you as we get along to our speed map. This is provided by Dan O'Sullivan. And Aidan, let's pick this apart and find out who's going to get a nice run.
Absolutely. So we're going to have a look at the barriers and how they're coming out. So the early speed, Magic Wand from out there in 24, Master Reality, Finch and Il Paradiso. These are actually flipped, obviously. This is the inside rail. I've got that big long run in, so about more than a kilometre into the first bend. So these are actually just around the wrong way. But you've got Twilight Payment, Il Paradiso going forward. There's really tricky barrier draws for horses like Latrobe. Magic Wand, I just don't know whether he's going to have to go that far forward to where the she will to get to the air. wonder whether she'll have to work too hard. But the interesting thing, if you're looking at these colours, between Joseph O'Brien and Aidan O'Brien, they've got 7 runners of the 24 in the field. Now, 5 of the first 6 mapped in running are the horses who are likely to be, you know, the first 6 in running. So it's just, it's going to be a lot of speed. I thought Latrobe was really, that's probably the trickiest draw of the race, but James McDonald on, so there's a big plus.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of all of the contenders in the Melbourne Cup, and we'll kick things off at the top of the page with the number 1 and last year's winner in cross counter. The 5-year-old Jason, who won the race last year, and I know you're pretty keen on this one.
He was brilliant when winning last year as a Northern Hemisphere 3-year-old. Carried 51 last year, has to carry a lot more weight. Since then, had a break and then resumed in Dubai and won there over 3,200 metres, was brilliant. And I think has been just ticking over in high class, staying races behind the best star in the world in Stradivarius and not being asked too much. I think they've had another single-minded preparation with a view to 2 Melbourne Cups, having won it the first time. And the way he won it last year was quite brilliant. He was interfered with when there was that mishap with a lap to go, maybe lost a length, settled well back, and he burst into contention 200 to go. I think he can go back to back. Yeah,
he carried 51 last year. He was on the minimum, and obviously they've changed the rules around Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds, so they're actually carrying more. There's a couple in this year's race, and I think it's Il Paradiso and Constantinople. Yeah. So Prince of Aran obviously was 3rd in that race, comes in 5.5 kilograms better. Finch comes in 6.5 kilograms better on last year. Rostropovich is in 7 kilograms better. And Sound, I know Sound's sort of a full-on chance in the market, was in 8.5 kilograms better than last year. But the form around this horse has been, I think, okay. You know, it looks a whole lot better than what it reads anyhow.
He is still a relatively young horse, and he's also only 4 horses have ever gone back-to-back in the history of the race, so he does have a few things against him. But let's have a little look at one of his recent runs. Here he is taking on Southern France, who's also a contender in the race.
Southern France was well enough beaten, I thought, by Cross Counter, even though Cross Counter didn't win this race. But his record over 3,200 metres, he's had 2 wins, including the Melbourne Cup and this placing. I think it's his trip. I think they've figured out from an early stage in this horse's career, Godolphin, that this is the horse that can not only win them 1 cup, but more than 1. And obviously the second opportunity is today.
Yep.
So in his races, he's been getting back in races that haven't been run very hard.
Okay.
I think the shape of this year's race, from his draw, he'll be able to sit around midfield, and I think that William Bjork will be looking to present him 300 metres to go, and I think he's a very powerful horse that's got that element of class. Like, he's beaten Prince of Aran pointlessly when they've met in Dubai, and Prince of Aran's UK form is nowhere near his. There's only 3.5 kilos. That really isn't much when you consider the quality of opposition that they've been lining up against. And it's just that he's come back to Australia, Prince of Aran, we've seen him, that he's so sort of high up in the pecking order, so to speak. But I really like this horse.
They obviously would have had this at the forefront of their mind, wouldn't they? It's not going to be an afterthought. This is a planned attack at the Melbourne Cup for a second year.
Totally agree, Emily. It just seems to be like they've won it last year, so as soon as they've won it, like, we're going to come back and win it again next year, and everything seems to be tailor-made around defending his title. I think he's one of the world's best stayers, and I think he's a leading contender in this year's Melbourne Cup.
Let's have a little look at a comment from Chris Connett, who is the travelling foreman for the Godolphin team, and find out how the horse compares to last year.
Yeah, he's a bigger, stronger horse from last year. Yeah, the weight has gone up a lot, but the horses in and around him with chances we're not giving them too much weight, so we're fairly confident. We're just as confident as last year, a little less stressed out because we've not had to give him a week's break, but the horse is fit, firing. He's really flourished since he's been here in Australia, so we're super confident.
And obviously there were a few niggling issues with Cross Counter coming into last year's Melbourne Cup, and as you heard there, no issues this year. He is horse number 1 in the field. Let's get along to the Japanese horse. They've dominated Carnival so far, taking out the Caulfield Cup, the Cox Plate. This was the Caulfield Cup winner, Glass, and it was an impressive winner, dazzling over the 2,400 metres.
And it was such a confident ride by Damien Lane. He has been the Southern Hemisphere jockey of 2019, even though a lot of his successes come in Japan. When he was sort of ridden up there, and that has led him to being on this horse to win the Caulfield Cup, and also, for those that didn't see, the Cox Plate and Les Grecheux. The issue that I have with Murder Glass is the inside barrier that can be a really high pressure place to jump from in a Melbourne Cup, because you've got 22 other runners that are coming across you. And I know in Japan it's high pressure racing there, but often those inside draws aren't ideal. The other thing is the type of race this is going to be. I think it's going to be very much more like a European staying race where there's pressure early and they'll really build from the 1,000. And on a slow track, I just don't know that suits him. He's got a brilliant turn of foot. He showed that in the Caulfield Cup, Aidan. But, you know, that said, if he's a better horse today, then maybe he could do the job again.
Absolutely. I've got to say, I've got no real concerns about Barrier 2. I thought that was a big asset to him, and I've got him taking a handy spot in my map. I've got him 3 back the fence, and if he's there, rather than covering, as he did this day, he covered the most ground of any horse in this race. The second longest distance covered by a horse in the Caulfield Cup was the Chosen One, who's back there last and circling the field. I thought it was a super performance this day. Obviously, the talking point will be Damien Lane, and this unprecedented Grand Slam of Golden Slipper, Cox Plate, Caulfield Cup, and then potentially the Melbourne Cup today. The last horse to win this Caulfield Cup, Melbourne Cup double was our Ethereal for Sheila Laxon back in 2001, but I wouldn't be writing him off.
12 have tried
very,
since.
very good.
12 have tried since. It's sort of a race that's gone off a little bit, the
Absolutely,
Caulfield Cup.
but this race, it's got all the contenders. It's got the E-Ball winner. It's got the best form out of Australia. It's got the 4th and 5th horse from last year's Melbourne Cup in there. And it's got, one of the best horses in Japan. I think the 3rd highest rated horse in Japan. So I think he's a great chance.
And the best thing about him is that he's won his past 6. It wasn't a fluke in the Caulfield Cup. He is on a fantastic winning streak, is Murder Glass. Do we have concerns about the soft conditions? Do we have concerns that he's too brilliant for the 3-2 and the 2-4 is more his go?
I think both are legitimate concerns, and I think that it's more that the soft conditions dampen this horse's clear brilliance. We saw there basically from the 600 or 700 he powered into the race, and then he put that race to bed from the 200 to the 100 and had a soft 100. So he's got that brilliance, more brilliance than any other runner in that race. Can that be extended to 3,200 metres in a slow track's the question.
Let's find out from the man himself. Damien Lane is the jockey aboard Murder Glass in this year's Melbourne Cup, and we found out if the horse will handle the 3,200.
It's a big question mark, but my gut feel is he'll run it out. Everything he's done, everything that we've put in front of him to date, he's handled well, so I'm hoping that he can handle this as well. I guess I was probably more confident about the Caulfield Cup just because he was proven around that distance range. And another thing we've got to take into account is it's the first time he's raced as close as 2.5 weeks together. Most of his runs have been 2 months apart, so it's another big question mark. But from what I've seen this morning, he seems to be handling it well. Well, his record for one, he just keeps stepping up to the mark and he keeps winning. He just turns up and does his job. There's nothing too special about him. He's just a good, genuine fast horse. They're high quality athletes. Over the last 15 to 20 years, they've just really furthered their blood stock. They've brought the best bloodlines from around the world, and they just are producing this high quality athlete that can compete anywhere on the world stage. Growing up around racing all my life, and Melbourne Cup's been, a race I've watched since as long as I could remember. So to be a part of it again is a big thrill, and to win it, no doubt, would be an even bigger thrill.
There's one thing about Murder Glass, he is the ultimate professional. I saw him in the Caulfield Cup and he just parades fantastically. He just knows his job. He's a real workman. Let's move along to Master of Reality. He's by Frankel. A number of Frankels well represented in the race, actually. And I'd just love to see Frankie Dettori win. We'd enjoy a good celebration with him, wouldn't we?
We'll the old star jump afterwards, that's for sure. He's had a few goes. He's run second in the race, I think, Frankie, 1 year. So, you'd love to see him be somewhere near it. But once again, we're seeing Joseph O'Brien with such a hand. He's winning races all around the world at the moment, and the best quality races as well. I think he's got 4 in this race, including Master of Reality. He's got to be some sort of chance.
It's a bit of a bogey race for Frankie. He's had a few chances, hasn't he? And I remember in 2015 when he was on Max Dynamite, he didn't do a great job that year. He probably should have won. And he did finish second. And it's ridiculous, really, because he is one of the preeminent jockeys of the last 15 years. He had a flat spot 6 or 7 years ago, a very flat spot, but his last two and a half years has been I don't know how else to describe it, off the hook good.
Yeah.
Like, he's been brilliant. Longines, world's best jockey, crowned last year. So, you know, there's no knock on his
Took him a while to win an English derby, actually. He only won that new approach quite recently for the amount of years he's been riding. So he's still got it in him.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about the form of this horse? What do you make? A little bit hit or miss, but has been running around the right horses, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to see a couple of his performances. So the race that I'd sort of take the most out of from him, obviously we're using cross counter as a guide, is this performance in the Ascot Gold Cup. So 4,000 metres, so no real problems about the stamina of the horse. Now, cross counter's out wide on the track, he's closer in, and I just thought he fought like a tiger. You know, at this point, the leader's gone past him, the winner, which is Stradivarius, is that right?
Yes.
Stradivarius who wins, yeah, exactly. So he's gone past. Stradivarius is a yardstick horse, and he's going to feature in a lot of these form lines. Now, he's stuck really well. He's beaten less than a length, and he's held off cross counter. So for mine, that's really good. He's drawn barrier 1, and I've got him in the trail in my map, or else leading, and from there, I think he's in the mix for sure.
That was sort of his best performance in getting close to Stradivarius, who's the world's best stayer, but his 2 runs subsequent to that I thought were fair. And that Ascot Gold Cup, the first 2,000 metres of that race, they were running 14-second 200-metre sectionals. Like, they're basically, I mean, I can't run that fast, but it's pretty slow, trust me. Like, for horses to be running even over that distance, that's a very slow, sedate pace. So cross counter, I thought, outside of Stradivarius, was clearly the run of that race where he was positioned. But yeah, that was a good performance. I don't think he's shown enough since, and I just don't like him for this race.
He has beaten home Latrobe and Twilight Payment in that Irish St Leger when chasing Southern France and cross counter, but he just comes in a little bit better than cross counter at the weights as well. So for that, you just got to give him a little bit of a chance on it.
Let's move along to the next horse in the market, which is Mirage Dancer, now with the Busserton Young team. Bifrankel as well, out of the mare Heat Haze. Ben Mellum retains the ride, rode in the Caulfield Cup, and it was a very eye-catching run in the Caulfield Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was. It's sort of this is the question that I have about the Caulfield Cup. You've got Nerf Glass who wins, and then you've got a clump of 5 horses that there's nothing between. So there's, like, how do you separate them? You basically, you've got half a dozen out of them. So, you know, overall, I just hold a little bit of a question mark over that, but he's obviously, you know, arrived in good enough order, and a lot of the formula, Aidan, that's been spoken about is that these international runners are better off having one run in Australia, and he fits that formula.
Yeah, exactly. Although we've seen in the last couple of years, it probably doesn't really need to happen. But
agreed.
You know, this horse is will be flying the Kiwi flag because it's Cambridge trainers, isn't it? It's Trent and Nat. So from the gap down at Cambridge. So you know, let's hope that they can go really well.
You've read that before. Trent and Nat from the gap, haven't you?
Here's a horse who's going to take
We've got to let him off. It's his birthday.
I think he can take improvement out of that Caulfield Cup. I don't have him as a strong chance. I don't know if it's the strongest chance out of the Caulfield Cup, which I am rating, Jason, as the form guide for this race. Hopefully you've got it wrong this year.
Well, you've got to have him there then.
Yeah.
Like, but if you've got others that are around him, you have to have him as a leading chance.
Absolutely. And because of that, he's just in the mix for mine, just below the best.
Just wondered if they're a bit slick for him over the 2-4, and perhaps he was going to find the 3,200 a little bit more to his liking, but it will be his first try over that distance. Let's get along to the next horse, and it is the 5 Southern France. And this is a really interesting contender, now with Kieran Maher and David Eustace, ridden by a very in-form Mark Zara, and wasn't far from Kew Gardens in the Group 1 Irish St Leger, which is a pretty good form guide. And also beat Downdraft in the St Leger trial. So I don't know really how to line this horse up, because I've looked at his form and found it pretty up and down. But I thought that the runs that I've seen him against cross counter, there's enough to say that cross counter has him covered, even conceding a couple of kilos from when they've met at level weights. Yeah. But he's drawn, I think, the sweet spot in the race. You know, like sort of 8 to 16. They're not bad barriers for the Melbourne Cup. It just gives jockeys an opportunity to assess what's happening inside and outside, as opposed to if you're drawn inside, you're absolutely dictated to, and outside, you're potentially caught very wide for the whole way around. Yep, so he beat Downdraft and Master of Reality in that St Leger trial. Then he's beaten home Cross Counter, Master of Reality, Latrobe and Twilight Payment in the Irish St Leger as well. So it's good form, and he's dropping as much weight as any in the
or just about as any of those. I know he's meeting Downdraft a couple of kilograms worse, but he's meeting cross counter a couple of kilograms better out of this Irish St Leger. So he's going to be an easy horse to spot as well, because you know, he does have that sort of baldy white face. Now I'm trying to spot him.
Coming down the middle.
Lime blue, just.
Of course,
he has had one start of the distance and failed. Does that concern, or you give him the benefit of the doubt
The other
again?
thing about him as well is he placed in the English St Leger last year, so it's not really too bad a form line as well. So,
well, in that Goodwood Cup that you speak of, Emily, cross counter had him cold. And that was sort of a race that, and that race that we saw there, they didn't run very fast at all. Again, it was a terribly run race by any standard. And cross counter sort of sat wide and was bumped around, and I thought was as good a run as Southern France. So, as I mentioned, I just couldn't have him ahead of cross counter. But he's not the worst top 5 chance for sure. Like, the market very much respects him, and understandably so.
He's a little bit longer than Master of Reality. Do you think that's fair, or you think he should be shorter?
I'd have him a bit shorter than Master of Reality myself. I think he's a better chance than Master of Reality, but
slightly.
Let's move along to Hunting Horn, who was victorious at Moonee Valley on Cox Plate Day, and a rather surprised winner. It's fair to say he is the Aidan O'Brien pacemaker back in his side of the world, doing all the hard yards and running around some good horses, but not competing. But I was really impressed to see what he did on Cox Plate Day. He didn't have to lead. He settled really nicely in behind them.
I just think that he's a horse that's not as good as a number of others. And like Aidan O'Brien, they don't get the rating of their horses, their ranking of their horses wrong very often. This horse is, I just don't think has got the class of others, even, I know it's Joseph O'Brien, but even sort of your Downdraft. And when you consider a horse like Magic Wand, like, she rates significantly better than Hunting Horn. We've seen Hunting Horn win in Australia, and that was a decent enough win at Moonee Valley, but I just don't think he's good enough.
Yep. He was fifth to enable going back 4 starts, but chased home Magic Wand in both the King George, the Arlington Million and the Irish Champion Stakes. He has beaten home Downdraft in that Moonee Valley Cup. Downdraft comes in a couple of kilograms better, but Downdraft's obviously come out and franked the form by winning the Lexus Hotham on Saturday as well. So I just don't know if this form's good enough. I kind of liked him when he went past the line. Thought, oh yeah, he's a horse I want to be on. The more I've looked into his form, the less interested I am in him.
He's unproven at the distance as well, isn't he?
I just don't think he's quite strong enough myself. But that said, look, as Aidan's mentioned, he's run past Downdraft here. But Downdraft has. What he did on Saturday was significant, as a significant level better than this on a track that's going to be a lot more similar today to Saturday compared to that Moonee Valley track.
I just don't know if that's the right sort of form for either of them.
Well, we'll see. Not long to wait until the Melbourne Cup. Let's get you to your next horse, following on from Hunting Horn Latrobe. But first, we're going to get you to a break and then back into more action on the back of that.
Johannes Vermeer in front, but here comes Rekindling. Johannes Vermeer, Rekindling. Max Dynamite back to the inside of the 100. Johannes Vermeer, Rekindling wearing it down. Johannes Vermeer and Rekindling stride for stride. Rekindling has won the Emirates Melbourne Cup.
To win the Melbourne Cup, you're only 24 years of age, and somehow you've beaten Dad.
Yeah, listen, I can't quite believe it yet. I'm just so thankful to Lloyd and to Nick. And this is unbelievable. It hasn't really sunk in yet, to be honest.
And that 3-year-old European form down into Australia, got him with that lightweight, the confidence must have grown.
Yeah, he had a very light weight, and like I say, Corey gave him a great ride. We got a lovely draw, and just it's not often in a big race like that the whole run went so well for him, you know. So yeah, listen, over the moon.
Well, what an incredible achievement to win a Melbourne Cup at all, but to win it at 24 years old, beating your father, how do you do it? It's just remarkable, wasn't it?
Absolutely. He's an incredible young man, Joseph O'Brien. What he's achieved is coming through as a jockey, and obviously in his father's shadows and things as well. But geez, he's just doing it, and he's such a humble bloke, so quietly spoken as well. So kudos to him, and he's got a chance. Well, he got 4 chances this year too.
One of the biggest meetings in the world is the Breeders' Cup, and we've just come off Breeders' Cup weekend, and he had success there as well, Joseph O'Brien. So he touched on the Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds, and we've also discussed that there are 2 that fall under that category, Constantinople and Il Paradiso. So the last 2 years have been won by Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds. They'll show up as 4-year-olds in your book, but they're not as well in, Aidan Rodley, as they have been.
It's only a kilogram and a half. Cross County would have won with another kilogram and a half last year, wouldn't he, Jason?
Oh, absolutely. He won that easily.
Let's get you to, very fitting, to one of Joseph O'Brien's runners in Latrobe. Only its 2nd run in Australia, finishing 2nd to Trap the Falls in the McKinnon last year and having its 1st run this time. So it comes here with a strong fitness edge, though, having had 6 runs at the 2,000 metres and beyond.
Yep, James McDonald, he's another Kiwi horse, because we'll claim him with James on. He's a horse who I think is the only Irish Derby winner to have run in a Melbourne Cup. He beat Rostropovich to win the Irish Derby last year, and obviously he was really good 2 starts back in the Ballyrowan after a pretty good run for 2nd and behind Twilight Payment in the Curra Cup. The barrier draw really concerns me with him. I just don't know where he's going to get to from 22. On form, I don't think he's the worst of chances, and he does have that classic form, Jason.
He's just going to have to work very hard from that position, but James McDonald, one of our best, competing in the Melbourne Cup. He's gone very close before James. No cigar, but, you know, he's aligning himself with the right stables.
And they locked him in very early, I think, for the ride on Latrobe.
Well, I think half the battle with that was like James sort of looked at the weights of the Cup and said, these are the ones that I can ride. And so I think he's probably thought, well, I'll just lock in on this, because of the other ones, you know, it's just going to be a touch and go whether he's going to get their weights.
Let's move along to the next, which is Mustajeer. Now, Mustajeer is horse number 8 in our market. Chris Lee's Damien Oliver combined with this one. We have a very informed Damien Oliver, which is pretty handy when you're heading into a Melbourne Cup, isn't it?
No, it certainly is. And now the winning most jockey over the Melbourne Cup Carnival history, Damien Oliver. And I just don't know about this horse and sort of where he sits out of that Caulfield Cup. Can you find a case, Aidan, that he leapfrogs the 5 other runners that finished in front of him?
I think he was solid enough, and I think he would take improvement out of that run. Obviously, he was the winner of the Ebor when it was the first time run for 7 figures in England. So it hasn't been the greatest of guides, the Ebor, but his run this day to win was very good. Obviously, we see a couple of other horses coming out of that race. We see Raymond Tusk especially making up very good ground, and Raymond Tusk actually comes in 2.5 kilograms better than Mustajeer off this, and he got a long way back. I think he was like 20th in running.
He was in an impossible spot, Raymond Tusk, at the 300.
It was a very muddling race, the Ebor, this year, and I think it really flattered Mustajeer. So whilst he did win, I think it probably played into Mustajeer's hands.
I don't want to take anything away from this win, because he did win it, and while things have maybe gone his way, that's still a really strong win in a race when a lot of horses were wanting to win, because, as I said, it was the first $1 million or £1 million or whatever it was, Ebor as well. He's now had a run in the Caulfield Cup, which I think he's going to really take improvement from. So I don't think he's the worst of chances, and once again, I'm relying on that Caulfield Cup.
Well, the reality is he's less than 2 lengths away from the winner in a clump of 5 others that are separated by less than a length. So, yeah, you have to be having him there, in which case you've got to be making a pretty strong case for Raymond Tusk with that weight swing, and that he was put into a position where he couldn't win that Ebor. I understand he's got quite a short, sharp sprint, that Raymond Tusk, so from that inside draw, if he can just get that soft run and be produced late, then that's how they think he's got the best chance of winning.
Let's move along pretty swiftly. Rostropovich, 5th last year in this from a very wide draw, 21, has been average, I suppose, fair to say, since that run last year.
I think he's been really ordinary. I was sort of expecting this horse to thrive in Australia and really progress from what I thought was a decent enough Melbourne Cup performance. Did you see enough, or have you seen enough from him, Aidan, to give him a chance?
I'm going to have a little something on him. I am. I'm going to back this horse, yeah.
Okay.
And I think...
Curveball Paul.
With your money? Or with someone else's money?
Yeah, with their money, exactly. I thought his run in the Caulfield Cup from a wide gate was superb because he's been caught wide, they've been running it along, and then he's had to make a forward move to sit outside the leader. Now, every one of those first 5 have dropped out. Finch was stuck on okay, but obviously Rostropovich has been one of those that dropped out. He was
finished 16th.
Exactly, but he did so much work in running.
His runs prior just weren't good enough
they were
either,
also from wide draws. He's like wide draw, wide draw, wide draw. Now he's 4th up into a Melbourne Cup, which he ran 5th in last year as a $20 chance. This year he's like 4 or 5 times that price. So I'm just going to have a little cover on him. So
well, there's a lot of discussion about how much work Finch did, and I agree with Aidan. Like when you look at Rostropovich, he worked harder than Finch, came from behind him down the back, work up the hill, and then sat outside of the leader. So he did have to work very hard, but it really did tell in the final stages.
A couple of gear changes for Rostropovich as well. Cross noseband and tongue tie, they go on. Twilight Payment is the next horse number 10. 7-year-old Gelding, who has had 2 of his past 3 in Ireland. We've got Hugh Bowman on board and was too strong for Latrobe, I'll spit it out, in the Curragh Cup.
Yeah, and in behind them were Southern France and Mustajeer as well in that Curragh Cup as well. Once again, a little tricky barrier draw first up, so it's going to be tough, but he was the horse who was 7th in the Irish St Leger last time as well, so he's got to turn around that Irish St Leger form, although his Curragh Cup form looks okay. Once again, first up, wide draw, there's a few things against him though, Jason.
And Hugh Bowman, I understand, is sort of a reasonably late pickup for this ride.
Yeah, he only picked it up on Saturday.
And so, you know, obviously normally a guy like Hugh Bowman, leading Australian jockey, would wanting to be booked into a horse a lot earlier than that, but they have decided to go with him. I personally don't think he's good enough, but you know, he's out of Dream On Buddy, and that's what all connections do when they have a Melbourne Cup horse. It's hard to get a runner in the race, let alone win it, but yeah, he's a runner's chance.
The next one that we look at is a pretty important one in the market, and it is Finch. Chris Waller does the training, and we've got Karen McAvoy, who's won the race many times, as the jockey, and you've got to admire that performance in the Caulfield Cup, and his performances prior were really strong as well. He looks primed, he looks like he's peaking for today.
He has sort of the Fiorente type profile. He's had a run in the Melbourne Cup. I thought it was a very good run last year. He's now with Australia's leading trainer, New Zealander Chris Waller, and everything about this prep has been aimed towards the Melbourne Cup. He must be a leading chance, I would have thought.
You could be talking about Rostropovich. Great run in the Melbourne Cup last year with Australia's leading trainer, David Hayes.
Horse 11, Finch.
Okay, we're on to Finch.
There it is.
There we go. Kingston Town win in Randwick was very good, then ran second in the Turnbull to become favourite in the Melbourne Cup. So big home vow declare sound and Rostropovich in that Turnbull, and then ran a really good race in the Caulfield Cup from a wide gate. Now, this is his run in the Melbourne Cup last year. Obviously, we're seeing Cross Counter back again, Prince of Aran back again, Rostropovich, Young Star, Sound all back again. His run was okay. He's there at this point going past Charles Road who'd led up, and I thought it was a really good run. Chris Waller, everything he's touching at the moment is turning to gold, isn't it?
Well, the feeling about this before this race was that next year would actually be his year, but they're happy to still present him for last year's Melbourne Cup. And so I think that is a big deal. I think everything that he's shown and how he's progressed says that he's up to it, but here's Cross Counter, look at him go.
Oh,
how good.
Rostropovich.
We're all getting distracted here. Crucially, he stays at the 54 kilos as well, which is really important, and he is drawn well, which is going to make it a much more economical run.
Absolutely, especially in comparison to the Caulfield Cup when he was drawn wide. Michael Walker had no options but to be doing what he did, and for him to stick on as well as he did in the Caulfield Cup after doing all that work. Now look at all those horses up in the first clump, they're nowhere. So you know, Murder Glass, the chosen one back in the field, along with Mustajeer right back in the field, and Vow and Declare right back. So that's where all of them have come from. Mirage Dancer's just there in midfield, just actually one inside Finch as he was there. So
just hope this wasn't a gut buster for him. That's my only concern, that this is the bottom of the well.
Just tell us about him, because like Emily, he looks like he's a big, strong horse, but he looks leggy as well. What's he like in physical?
He's a huge animal. He's just exactly what you'd expect out of a stayer, a European stayer, big, roomy, long stride, lovely and relaxed. He's just designed for this race. It's his, it's his for the taking.
And your description there suggests that Flemington as a race course will just be so much better than Caulfield.
Exactly. That's the impression that he gave. And he was really, without doing anything wrong, he was on toe, he was bouncing.
And it sounds like he's unflappable as well. I think we've got a clip to show there too, don't we? So
it's Chris Waller with Finch doing a little preview, but they're trying to get him to prick his ears and look interested, but he's not having a bar of it.
It's Charlie Duckworth, who's Chris's racing manager, who's in this clip as well with him, isn't it?
We've got Finch here and Charlie performing ready for tomorrow. Big day. He's in tune, ready to go, and we're thoroughly looking forward to it. Obviously, young stars there representing the stable as well. So hopefully there's a bit of celebrating, which is what Charlie's good at after the Melbourne Cup tomorrow.
I've seen Jason Tunn bring those ones out exactly. They must have
maybe when
followed your moves.
cross-counter comes across the line
They're
in front.
very well documented moves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the Kiwis in the Cup, because obviously we just saw Chris Waller there and we've mentioned James McDonald, but if you want to get involved in a New Zealander in the Cup, then here's all the ways you can do it. Mirage Dancer, Trent Buston, Natalie Young, we spoke of James McDonald, Chris Waller, Michael Walker, Mike Maroney, Surprise Baby comes through, Rich Hill Stud, Constantinople even has a Kiwi owner in Kevin McKenzie, Murray Baker and Andrew Forsman obviously train the chosen one, and Chris Waller again with young
And there's probably there might be a New Zealander in some little pockets of
that we've missed
as well, and obviously the chosen one is just full of Kiwis.
It sure is. There is another Kiwi who we've managed to get a hold of, and he also knows how to win a cup. Let's have a look at Jimmy Cassidy.
I was just so confident with Kiwi, eh? Oh, I think in all the 38 years I rode, I don't think I've ever been so confident of winning a race. I borrowed a few dollars off me boss, Patrick Campbell, to have a little bet, which jockeys weren't allowed to bet, but I thought I can't go that far on a big bird and not have a bet. I just knew he was just an out-and-out two-miler. And his performance in the Wellington Cup was outstanding to win. To come from last on the corner, never went round the horse, got up the fence, and I beat Marita with the Spiders. Well, they thought he couldn't win because back in them days, he was the only horse that hadn't, I think in the Melbourne Cup, that hadn't had a run for a month. He won at Waverley, and then it was a month before he ran in the Melbourne Cup. They said, oh, he can't win. He hadn't had a run in Melbourne. Win, he just made him look second rate. Snowy was standing in the mounting yard Melbourne Cup day. I'm standing beside him. He's got a roll your own cigarette in his mouth, sticking out of his mouth, that much ash on it, and he's just standing there looking around. He was like Kiwi. Kiwi was the same. He never got flustered. Snowy might have got nervous inside, the same as I did, but mentally he was so relaxed, he enjoyed it. He was the only horse in the mounting yard that never had a sweat mark on him. He just walked around like a 10-year-old. And I remember Bart Cummings, Colin Hayes and Tommy Smith standing there saying, look at that horse, Kiwi. He was walking around like this, asleep. So he just had the right attitude, you know, because half the horses when you're in the mounting yard, Flemington and big meetings, they lose it in the mounting yard and they're overexerting themselves, sweating and carrying on. With Kiwi, you could put a bomb off beside him and wouldn't have worried him. I remember when I rode him at Hara, the late Eric Temperton was there, who trained Silver Knight. And I said, Mr. Temperton, I said, any advice about the Melbourne Cup? He said, son, he said, ride him the same way you rode him today. And he said, look out for the clock tower. He said, if you get somewhere near them at the clock tower, he said, he'll come over top of them. And that was one thing I never forgot. I kept that on my mind, the clock tower, and be patient, make the right decisions, in or out, left or right, be quick. When you replay the race and look at it again, he was probably a length off them at the clock tower, and by the time he got to the winning post, he was a length and a half in front of them.
Mr. Jazz on the outside, Noble Comment and Kiamare settle down to a ding-dong struggle. Noble Comment about a neck in front, Mr. Jazz on the outside, and Kiwis flying might beat them all. Kiwis come from last in a phenomenal performance. Won the cup by...
Flew out of Melbourne on the Friday into Christchurch actually, The reception when I got off the plane, even on the plane coming home with my little Melbourne Cup, I probably could have retired on that Saturday after I won on Berletta, and I would have had no regrets. It was a race that opened all the doors for me, you know. I kept in touch with Snow and Anne, who were, as I said, they were, in one respect, if you could have a second mum and dad in racing, they were it. Because of the loyalty, I think. That's what, you know, chokes me up a little bit now thinking about it, how loyal they were to me. And to sit here today, reminiscing of everything, it's beautiful, beautiful. I used to come home from school and watch the Melbourne Cup. I'd have a push bike, I'd leave school at 2 o'clock. The teacher said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going home to watch the Melbourne Cup." I said, "I'm going to ride in one day." As I say, goosebumps never go away, memories never go away. They took a lot of things off me in racing, but they can never take that one.
To go. It's Finch with a Prince of Aran on the outside. Rostropovich is running on.
I actually thought he was going to win it at one stage.
Here comes cross counter coming at Marvello. Cross counter's flying. The Blue Army have done it last. Cross counter has won the Melbourne Cup from Marvello, a Prince of Aran.
Oh, I was a very emotional Tash that day. Everything was just, it was incredible. I was so overwhelmed, and well, he just made everything like dreams come true, I suppose. He really enjoyed being out in Australia last year. I think he just likes travelling full stop. I'm really happy the way he's going. He's doing everything right again this year.
She's a funny character, Tash. She's absolutely 100% in love with her job, and I'm very, very lucky to have her.
Yeah, I was a blubbering mess that day. He had me a bubbling mess, didn't you?
She adores the horse. She was a big part of that story last year.
You know, I do. I love him so much. I see him as my pet, you know. Ooh, good boy. Mwah. Just wants to play.
He's a fan favourite, is Prince of Aran, and he looks like he's coming here with a really good chance as well. He's already won on Australian soil, and he's going to back that up into the Melbourne Cup. And of course, he ran an absolute blinder last year.
Yeah, he did. He ran third, and it was a terrific run. He's come back and won a Geelong Cup as well. He drops 4 kilograms from that, beat home Steel Prince and Nerf Bosque in that race. But then you go back into the Herbert Power prior to that, and he couldn't beat the Precious One, who's then come out and run 5th in the
Chosen One.
The Chosen One. I get them wrong all the time. In the Lexus Hotham the other day. So I don't know if he's a contender or not, because if I'm rating him, I've got to rate the Chosen One. So I just don't know. I'm a little torn on it.
Well, the difficulty is that he's been absolutely well covered in Europe, but he comes to Australia and you see him performing really well. You've seen the horse, Emily. What is it about him? He just seems to be a different horse in Australia.
I think he just loves a trip. I think he just loves being on holiday.
Don't we all?
I think, yeah, it just seems like he gets on that plane, the sun on his back, and he just grows an extra set of legs. He really enjoys being here. He's a lovely horse in the flesh. He's nothing particularly special, but he's just a really bonny little horse, and it's just a great story with his trainer's really charismatic, and I just think he's, as an adopted Australian, it's a lovely story around him.
What will the post-race be if Walker wins the Cup for Fellows? And I mean,
I'll be expecting a Pukana for starters. I'll be very disappointed in the Kaz if he doesn't get the Pukana. I've got to say, Michael gave him a perfect run this day. He just gave him the peach of the race. Now, he's got to get that type of run again in the Melbourne Cup, and I don't know if it's going to be quite so easy. And the horses like Steel Prince and Nerf Boss, that's not a real good recommendation for either of those, is it? So I'm steering against him.
One thing's for sure, he's going to run an honest race, and you'll guarantee he'll be trying his best. 5 starts down under, all in group races, and never missed a place. Let's get you to our next horse, Raymond Tusk. An interesting one, this. We spoke briefly about him earlier. Richard Hannon, Jamie Spencer, 54 kilos. Mustajeer won the Ebor, but this galloper was pretty unlucky.
Yeah, he certainly was. He just got so far back, and there'll be plenty that'll be plumping for Raymond Tusk, but I'm not sure that I'm overly keen on his form lines and that Mustajeer form line. I think there are classier animals in the race. But you know what? He has got that turn of foot that he showed in the Ebor. From the 3 to the 1, he came into it, but he just was too far off them to win. So.
He's got some form over the distance as well. He finished second to Gunstayer DXB over this trip 4 starts ago, so that's another positive.
Yeah, absolutely. He's bringing sort of form lines that we think can measure up okay. Mustajeer's run okay in the Caulfield Cup, but once again, he looks like a bit of an unknown. And there's just a few things that just like between him and Twilight Payment, they were the head scratchers in the race for me. I really don't know how to weigh them up. There looks to be some upside, but I can't get excited about him.
There's, you'll notice some synthetic hoof filler on the programme as well, and that's not really of any concern. Liz Grossier had that when she won the Cox Plate, so don't let that put you off. Downdraft is next, and Downdraft is a horse that I'm really interested in. I loved him in his parade on Cox Plate Day. I actually put him as my pick of the yard, and that win in the soft conditions on a big roomy track, just think he's got a really nice profile to run a slashing race.
That's really good to know, because what he did from there is he showed to me clear improvement. He relished the conditions on Saturday. The question mark is he going to be able to deliver at least that performance and maybe another small peak his third run in 10 days?
This performance isn't good enough to be winning the Melbourne Cup. I know he's dropping in weight. But he has to go to another level again to do this. So
I'm going to Rostropovich you here and say that I think he's got a nice chance.
Okay.
I'm good. Yeah, I really, really like this horse. I just love the way he comes home. He loves to win. 7 victories from 18 starts. He's like a jumper, and those jumpers always race well.
How do you rate Cariff?
Oh,
next year.
Okay.
I think he's still
Cariff
quite
takes
immature.
about 6 lengths off him here in the closing stages of Alexis Hotham, and it wasn't even a strong race. All the horses who were already in this race said, no, I'm not going to run, I'm going to go to the Melbourne Cup instead. So I can't.
I don't know if he can win, but I think he'll run a really good race.
He drops his hand with 50 metres to go. The way that race was run was a genuinely run staying race, more like the Melbourne Cup will be run than the previous race where he was beaten at Moonee Valley. He carried 59, he's down to 53.5. His sectionals, he wasn't entitled to kick like that because he was planted behind a really strong speed.
That's a good point.
And so everything else has dropped off. Gee, I think he has to be a leading chance in the race.
A leading chance?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, good on you, Jason. Great. Love your thoughts.
I think the slow track's also a benefit.
Yeah,
I think
huge benefit.
I think he relished those conditions, and that's a big plus. Just getting that toe into the ground that he wasn't able to do so much at Moonee Valley. It's a hard one because if you just go on his previous European form, you'd pen him. But once you've seen that and you know that that's a formula, the Hotham, leading into the Melbourne Cup with that weight drop, like all of a sudden you're sort of thinking, oh, maybe it's time to jump on.
The statistics are a little bit against him. Only 3 horses since 1960 have managed to complete that double of the Hotham into the Melbourne Cup. Magic Wand is the horse that comes next. Just 2 wins, from 20 starts, but has been really competitive with some of the best horses in the world. We're looking bricks and mortar, Magical. It's a pretty impressive lineup.
She is the best weighted horse in this race. The question is, it's not a 2,000 metre race. It's a 3,200 metre race. She's drawn the outside barrier, but she has high class. She might not be a winner as such. She's been bridesmaid on a number of occasions, but she's been bridesmaid against some of the best horses in the world.
Absolutely.
And this race in the Cox Plate, I like. The reason why I like it is because she was aggressively ridden from the start. I reckon this was a plan to just blow the cobwebs out of her and just to see where she lines up. She was asked to do a heck of a lot of work all throughout this race and a long way out. I reckon they might actually ride her a bit conservatively today.
I do too. I
don't
totally
think they'll
agree.
press the button, and I think there'll be enough pace and they'll just see if she can go for 1,200 and try and hold her up and then just power into it late. I thought this was an excellent Melbourne Cup
She
trial.
didn't have to stick on like she did either, really, did she?
Yeah, everything sat off her and just went past her, and she fought on okay.
The difference was she was able to take up a position from barrier 2. This time she's got barrier 24. But like most of the speed maps I've seen have her up in the speed. I've actually got a midfield here, so I tend to agree with you there. It is the question marks I have here are distance and the draw. So. That's what's just got me against her a little bit.
Like on international ratings at 53.5, she's pitchforked into it. She's got a very high performance level, but it's a genuine concern, the 32, because you just haven't seen it. But there are a few horses there that fall into that category. Yep. If you want to be on murder glass, you've got to take that leap of faith, and there are 3 or 4 others.
Let's find out a little bit more about Magic Wand from travelling foreman TJ Comerford.
got good chances in the race. I suppose Magic Wand is probably the pick of him, even though she hasn't gone that trip before. But like on class alone, like you'd have to give her some bit of a chance. You know, it's a big step up 2 miles for her. But I mean, really, she's been running well. She front run in the Cox Plate. She finished 4th. It was a good run, like, you know. I think she can be better. I think she can look better. Do you know what I mean? So she's shown the signs that she's come out of the race very well, because yesterday now she got down for a roll and that, which is unusual for her. Normally she'd roll in the stable, but yesterday she got down. So I think she's starting to settle in better. So she'd probably be our main chance.
Some pretty encouraging words there from TJ Comerford, and that is around Magic Wand. Cox Plate has produced a couple of winners in recent times. They've been Green Moon and Fiorente. Nerf Bosque comes next in our market. It is horse number 16. Hayes Davenig, Luke Nolan combined with Nerf Bosque. Second to Kew Gardens. We spoke about that form a little bit earlier on, but hasn't been able to produce anything close to that in 7 runs since.
I couldn't find much I couldn't see much to justify backing Nerf Bosque.
No, nor do I. The one thing that there'll be people at home who'll be keen on backing the only grey in the race, and by Master Craftsman, who did stand at Windsor Park Stud as well, but yeah, I'm the same as Jason.
Let's get you along to Sounders next, a German-bred galloper who finished 27.5 lengths off cross-counter in last year's Cup and has failed to run a place since. Do we have any sort of a measure on Sound?
No check this year, but Sound, I don't know, he sort of looked like he was coming into it last year and then sort of dropped out. And again, at Caulfield in the Caulfield Cup, he just was left without a turn of foot. So no, I personally couldn't.
He copped a bit of interference as well, but I think he had already peaked on his run by then. So 4th up, he'll be fitter for this. He's obviously been set for the race. Just an amazing statistic here around Gerard Peterson. Of course, we know as the GG syndicates and those colours that he wears, because they're all around New Zealand racetracks as well. This is his 27th runner in a Melbourne Cup, which is an incredible statistic. He won the race as a part owner with Brew, second with Bauer, and in the last 18 years, he's only had 1 year where he hasn't had a Melbourne Cup runner.
Goodness me, wow, what a treat. Let's have a little look back at one of those horses. It's Brew.
It's Brew going to the lead with 150 left to go on the Cup. Brew 2 lengths in front now. He's drawing clear of Yippee-Yi-Yo and Brew down to the post. Brew first, 2 lengths to Yippee-Yi-Yo, a photo for third between Second Coming and Carpstad Way.
I'll do it for the glory.
Exalted Lightning led, Naval Warfare, now Surprise Baby, then Bondiga, top of the range running on late. Surprise Baby reached the lead from Naval Warfare, top of the range in Bondiga, but Surprise Baby, well, it's a surprise to me, and its 6th race start, it's won the Tab Adelaide Cup. Paul Pruska, that is some training performance.
One of the great stories in the history of the Adelaide Cup. This horse had 5 starts prior to today. Never been past 2,000. The old man shocking one in Melbourne Cup. We started the day by saying this had a connection with the Melbourne Cup, the old Adelaide Cup. I'm telling you, this horse could be at the first Tuesday in November. This is how good he is.
But here comes the baby. Surprise Baby moves up on the outside of Supernova and Wolf. Surprise Baby just in front of the 50. Surprise Baby under Geordie Charles is pulling clear, and he is our hope in the Cup. Surprise Baby by a length and 3/4 won the Bart Cummings.
He is a very, very special horse. He's trained by Paul Pruska, who's got himself a runner in the Melbourne Cup.
We heard the commentator saying there he's our Australian hope, but he's also a Kiwi hope because he's Kiwi bred, isn't he? He's by Shocking, and he was born and raised here in New Zealand.
Absolutely. What a story behind him as well. I think we're going to talk to John Thompson very shortly, but it's an incredible rags to riches tale where he was, bred at Ritual Stud, who produced Prince of Penzance, went to a ready-to-run breeze-up preparation, didn't really breeze up so well, so joined Margaret Faulkner's stable, was in work for a preparation preparation, then put on Gabble House and sold to Australia.
Really difficult, I think, really difficult to deal with. Yeah.
And not the only New Zealand link, Jordan Childs, his dad, Greg, of course we know him as being a Taranaki apprentice, and of course Greg grew up in Stratford, my old hometown too. So we'll claim a bit of Stratford about this one. Jason, I know you're pretty keen.
Amber and gold, yeah. You had to talk about the amber and gold, didn't you?
Amber and black, come on.
The best thing he's proven over the distance, isn't he? He's won the Adelaide Cup over 3,200 metres.
Sixth start.
He is a relatively inexperienced horse, and also he gets a nice weight drop, but we know he can carry weight. He's carried 60 kilos, 58, 59. He's done it at both ends.
Absolutely. His Mark Cummings win was very good. And we speak about, cross-counter winning the Melbourne Cup at his 8th start. Well, this horse had won a 3,200 metre feature at his 6th start. So he seems to be coming into the race quite nicely as well.
Is the Mark Cummings the form line that we want? Is he classy enough?
Well, Al Mandan did win it. Jason, you're quite keen on this horse, aren't you?
I'm really keen on Surprise Baby. I think when you've qualified for the Cup, you can do everything in your power to make sure a horse is going to peak for the big day, and I think that's what Paul has done with Surprise Baby. His numbers, Emily, to me are good enough. He has to be a top 5 chance for me.
Let's hear more from the man who bred Surprise Baby in John Thompson of Rich Hill Stud.
Paul Presker, who's training him, he came over to see the horse, and I said to him, well, he might make a nice country cups horse, but I didn't quite think he'd end up the favourite for the Melbourne Cup. But, but that's the way it goes, and it is, as you say, a great story, and, if he can go on and perform well, which I'm sure he will, it'll be a great boost for the stallion and also for the New Zealand breeding industry. So the trainer's view is he's a natural star. You probably saw he won the Adelaide Cup 2 miles on his 6th lifetime start, which I can't think of any other 2 mile stayer, and pretty much, especially in Australasia, that's ever done that. Shows a great turn of foot. They think he's stronger and better. So look, and there's always next year. They said if he doesn't win it this year. When it comes to horses running in the Melbourne Cup, as we know, it's very hard to even get a horse in there nowadays, and it's very difficult to breed a horse that can stay 2 miles. There's not many stallions in Australasia that can throw 2 mile winners anymore, so it's great if Shocking can throw the winner. It will be a real boost for him, and as I say, it'll be a big boost for the Karaka sales.
We leave one very interesting runner and we head along to another one in Constantinople, and he's generated a huge amount of interest when he landed in Australia, and then following on from that Caulfield Cup run he generated more interest, but we've had mixed reports, haven't we, about his behaviour.
The headgear. What's on this horse's head here, Emily? You've got a red hood, you've got side winkers, you look like you've got a crossover noseband. What does this say about the galloper?
Well, it's well publicised that he's very difficult. He can be very wayward in his races. He can also sweat profusely pre-race. He did none of that on Caulfield Cup Day. He behaved impeccably, he paraded impeccably, he cantered down to the start impeccably, and he really ran well without a whole lot of luck, but he's not a winner. And we heard that from Johnny Murtagh in the week, didn't we? He likes coming second, but is that just the race?
I think he's a different horse to what he was over there. He's joined David Hayes and it hasn't put a foot wrong by all accounts. He's running straight and true and all his track work, and obviously he was very good in the Caulfield Cup. When he just about went down on his nose, he had no real luck. We're going back into form lines that we saw cross counter. His final 2 runs leading into his Melbourne Cup win were the Gordon Stakes and the Great Voltigeur. This is the Great Voltigeur that we're looking at. This is it's in behind Logician, who's come out and won a St Ledger afterwards. This is absolutely top-class form.
Yeah, it's very, very similar form lines. Don't know that he's got quite the overall level, or brings quite the overall level that Cross Counter did, but you just couldn't deny how unlucky he was in the Caulfield Cup. Whether he's going to punch through and put his nose in front when he is given that opportunity, it's hard to know, but this is a very big run, Aidan. They've looped around Emily when sort of the races got serious, and he's been caught in pockets and not clear.
And I like the way he picked himself up. He got a bump, but he still picked himself up and really drove to the line.
Yeah, I totally agree. So he's obviously got back in the field. He's in traffic. He's behind a wall of horses, and thinking, where's he going to go? There's a real... all these horses sort of around their red verdant and the light blue colours and sound there on the outside. So they come together, and that's Constantinople riding behind them, just on the inside there of Vow and Declare. So looks for that run. No, run there. So it's obviously sort of stopped in his track, loses all momentum and really picks up late. And you can see there that's Vow and Declare who's hitting the line quite strongly. He's not that far away from him, so I think it's not bad form.
a Flemington track I thought would suit him better, but is he too immature for a big high-pressure race like this? He's only had 9 starts, hasn't he?
I looked through his form line, and he's been in races in the UK where there have been enough runners in there, so it's not like all his runs have been in 4 and 5 and 6 horse races. There have been some decent size fields, so I think given he's been in a Caulfield Cup, that says that he can probably handle the pressure of a Melbourne Cup. Unpopular opinion, I like the booking of Joe Moreira, the Brazilian from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
He takes it from Glenn Boss, though, who's literally got the hot cash hand.
Yeah.
For those that haven't sort of watched much racing, last week he won a $7.5 million race, and he's also won a $15 million or $14 million race, Glenn Boss. He's not riding, Joe Moreira is.
One thing, Moreira has been a little bit hot and cold in Australia, though, Jason.
And that's why he's so maligned. He's famous for being the last jockey to lose on winks.
Yeah.
and one thing I will say, that was 3 years ago in the Melbourne Cup, he probably pulled off the best losing ride in a Melbourne Cup that I can remember in maybe 20 years. I thought it was an absolute peach. He lost on Heartbreak City by a zigzag paper to Al Mandan. And that was from barrier 23. So I think he's a high quality jock, but there are plenty that just want to steer clear because of that.
I would rather have an Australian big race rider, but I don't deny Joe Moreira's talents. He's an incredible rider. Let's have a little chat with Ben Hayes to find out what he makes of Constantinople's draw.
Oh, very happy. Wanted a gate between 5 and 10, and we got in the middle 7. Should get a good run from that gate. We settle in a lovely position, and we just need luck at the top of the straight. He's had a couple of looks around the course proper now, and I think Luke's first words were when he got off the horse, he'll enjoy the bigger track of Flemington, and I agree. He's a big horse, and the big long straight will suit him. He didn't have a hard run, and I've been thrilled with his work, so I just think his natural improvement, a couple of weeks between runs, and he'll fly. You know, it's a dream of mine to win it, and I'm sure Tom would love to win it. Dad's won it as well, but to win it as a 3-way partnership would just be fantastic.
They've been winning big races of late, and they perhaps have the horse to take out this year's Melbourne Cup. Let's move along to number 20, Il Paradiso, who does line up from barrier number 17. Lightly raced, broke his maiden only 5 starts ago, 3rd behind Stradivarius and DXB 2 back, and that run was over this trip. I quite like this horse as a rough chance.
Do you know he's had half his starts in maiden company?
Yes, but he'll stay the distance.
Yeah, half his starts.
We've had jumpers.
Can you believe it? He took 5 starts.
We've had jumpers come over and run places.
That's right.
So don't underestimate him.
No, I don't want to underestimate him.
And I think his first start, the winner of that race went on to win a Group 1.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you. Thanks. Take that. Tick. I know it's your birthday, but...
Do you know the qualifying run for this Melbourne Cup? The one that's got him into the race, he's run second to last in. He's qualified for the Melbourne Cup by running second to last in a race. And
where
here
did
it is.
Rostropovich finish in the
I wouldn't quite call that fake news, but he's run 3rd to the best star in the world here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's put it into context. So while he's running through there, so here he is with the big baldy white face, as you can see there. This is going to the outside. It was a lovely ride on Stradivarius this day. Brought to the outside, and the horse on the inside kicks back and beats Il Paradiso late here. He has drawn wide, but he is lightly tried. There is a lot of upside about it. Let's be clear about that.
Hang on. You're sort of going each way all of a sudden here on us. I thought you did set tight in this horse.
I don't know if he's the right sort of horse who... This is my qualifying criteria, you know. How do horses like, you know, Wellington Cup winners and New Zealand Cup winners or whatever, who are winning 3,200 metre races, get beaten by some horses running second to last?
So
in a
you're
race?
dirty that the New Zealanders don't get in, but the
kind of a little
Europeans
bit
do.
worried
Is this what's
about
happening here?
But obviously he's high class, and his figures, by all accounts, and world ratings, especially when you've got Stradivarius there, that's what's bringing his rating up.
And that's right, and that's what's really tricky, isn't it? Because recency bias says we're now looking for the Northern Hemisphere bred 3-year-old that's lining up as the Southern Hemisphere bred 4, because they've won the last couple.
Absolutely.
And so we're looking at Constantinople and Il Paradiso, and I just don't know whether they're quite there. We saw Constantinople, maybe he is, because we saw him in the Caulfield Cup. Il Paradiso, not quite sure, because how do you assess that race against Stradivarius? It was a boat race until the last 200 metres. And so by default, you know, he's been good enough to get close, but it wasn't a proper race.
Yep, but he's run in behind Stradivarius and Logician his last two, and they are probably England's number 1 and 2 stayers.
I think we've talked you around there, Aidan. I think we've got Aidan on board for that one. He does have a gear change, blinkers first time, remove the winkers and the cross noseband. We turn the page and we get to Steel Prince. Now, Steel Prince had a little bit of a unfortunate turn to his campaign. He got late scratched at the start at Caulfield, and that's maybe put a bit of a dampener on his prep.
Absolutely. He was all set for the Herbert Power. He played up and he came out, and it's been a prep that I'm sure if they had it over again, they would just have to put it aside. It's not a Melbourne Cup winning prep for Steel Prince.
Yep.
And sometimes there are just horses that you think maybe 6 months ago would be a Melbourne Cup horse, and it's highlighted that he could have that potential, but this prep has been a disaster. You're getting a big price if you want to say he can bounce back, but I just don't think he will.
Not for you? Yep. He has beaten Surprise Baby a couple of times, so if you're considering Surprise Baby, well, Steel Prince has beaten him. We're getting you along to the Chosen One, and of course, this is the real Kiwi influence in the race, isn't it? Trained by New Zealanders Murray Baker and Andrew Forsman. We've got jockey Tim Clark on board, a lightweight with the 52 kilos and drawn in barrier 18. And we thought, you don't want to talk to us about the horse, we might as well talk to Andrew Forsman himself, who of course co-trains with Murray Baker. And Andrew, great to have you joining us. And the Chosen One lines up in the Melbourne Cup, and that must be a real thrill.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, we would love to have drawn a better barrier, but it's a big field, and hopefully he can slot in and get some luck somewhere.
Andrew, Aidan Rodley here. I just wanted to just get your thoughts on his form leading, and obviously the Herbert Power. You've beaten the horse you ran third in last year's Melbourne Cup. How confident are you with his form that it can measure up today?
I think you have to forgive him his last two runs. Go back to the Herbert Power in a truly run race. He was strong to the line and strong through the line. He just hasn't had that in his last two. The Caulfield Cup was a muddling run race, and as was Saturday's, it was a bit of a non-event for him, really. So you have to be a little bit forgiving, but it isn't, it's not an easy race to just line up and think you're going to turn that form around. I think, again, hard to see how much tempo is going to be in the race today.
Andrew, he's a horse that I've noticed just relishes work and relishes races. Do you think he can bounce through all these runs and put in another peak performance?
Yeah, I don't think the racing will worry him so much. He does come through his races really well, so that's not so much a concern. I guess what we really want is a truly run race, and whether we get that or not, I guess we're not in a position to dictate that. He's just a horse that needs to get back, find his feet, and hopefully gets a bit of luck and doesn't have to cover too much ground doing it.
Andrew, from a punting point of view, we had yesterday's call to the card. Tom Waterhouse backed the horse to win $1 million. Does that get you? Is that quite heartening?
Yeah, I think it's probably a publicity stunt more than anything. He's just back to few at odds, I think. He's obviously got a spare bit of money to play with, Tom.
What about the blinkers coming off, Andrew? What's your thought process behind that?
He has raced, particularly on Saturday, he raced very keenly, again in a muddling run race. The blinkers went on, I guess, to try and sharpen him up after a bit of a flat second up performance. I think you go back to some of his better performances have been run without the blinkers. He's very relaxed in his work without the blinkers. I guess, were worried he'd become almost too relaxed, and then now a couple of runs back with the blinkers on, and he's just gotten a little bit keen. So to run the 2 mile out, give him every chance, it's a sort of a punt we had to take, really.
Andrew, you've come close to having Melbourne Cup runners with Mongolian Khan obviously winning the Caulfield Cup and then things falling apart, John Snow falling apart. How exciting is this year for you, and has everything gone according to plan?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to say gone according to plan when the last 2 races haven't been run to suit, but it's very unforgiving at this level. There's no hiding, and he's in a full field of very good horses. It's exciting, but you sort of got to take it with a grain of salt a little bit too, because a lot of it's going to come down to luck, particularly when you're drawn outside of 17 very good horses, and they'll all be trying to jockey and find the best position they can.
Andrew, just before we let you go, have you got a tip for us at Ellerslie today, something we can load up on ready for the Melbourne Cup?
I reckon you can back St Emilion each way with a bit of confidence.
All right, thank you so much, and thanks for joining us, and obviously best of luck with the Chosen One. We'll be cheering the Kiwi on home.
Thanks, guys.
So Andrew Forsman there just talking about his chances with the Chosen One. Is a long shot, a lot of racing prep hasn't gone to plan, but still we're in the race.
Absolutely, and it's, you know, the Dennis brothers who bred the Phantom that Murray produced for second back in 1990. They've got a team in there along with a whole lot of other the Kiwi horses. Form-wise, like, I don't mind his Herbert Power win, but like Andrew said, he's just, things haven't gone right in those last couple.
On Saturday, things went terribly. At the first sort of 1,000 metres of that race was a disaster, and he just wasn't able to get into it after that. But doesn't it show the appeal of the Melbourne Cup, particularly the rich history that New Zealand has? Unfortunately, we were gearing up to see Glory Days there as well, but things didn't go well with her prep. And Aidan, you touched on the fact that, you know, Mongolian Khan as a Caulfield Cup winner was set to line up as the favourite of the Melbourne Cup of his year. It's not easy, and that's what makes it all the more appealing to even have a runner in it, let alone have a winning chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Wish him all the best. And, you know, on what he did last preparation, he went to Sydney and he became a different horse, didn't he? So, you know, ran a terrific race in the Derby and won the Group Hill over there.
And speaking of his Ellerslie tip, 10 races at Ellerslie today. Race 7 is where Centimillion lines up in, the OMF Stakes. So 10 races at Ellerslie, also racing at Wingatui today. So if you're anywhere near those areas, great parties at both venues.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at the next horse, Vow and Declare. It is an Australian, well, it's American sire, but Australian-owned, Australian-bred. Danny O'Brien does the training. Craig Williams the riding. A terrible barrier, but a horse that I've really been keeping a close eye on, and a horse that I think is the best of the Australian group.
Just like what he was doing through the winter, you know, his running behind Mr. Quickie in the Queensland Guineas was absolutely first class. Then as a 3-year-old stepped up to 3,000 metres and won that Tats Cup. And he didn't just win it, he's actually run away from them. He's come back with 2 really encouraging runs in behind Finch in that Turnbull. Then last time out obviously was just a grinding stayers type second in the Caulfield Cup. It's not bad form.
Isn't it amazing how the views on like training a winner for this race has changed over a couple of decades? And Bart Cummings' 12 Cups were based on getting miles and legs, and then the Europeans have come over having not had starts and had success and run really well. This horse, an Australian trained horse that is a very European preparation, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Chris Waller's gone the opposite way with Finch. You know, he has given it a Bart Cummings preparation. Same with Youngstar. So it is 2 different approaches, and I wouldn't be sort of saying one's better than the other.
It's got a lightweight, has Vow and Declare, but the barrier is a little bit of a disaster. Let's find out a little bit more from Danny O'Brien.
Yeah, he couldn't be better. He ran very well at Caulfield for us in the Caulfield Cup. He's come out of it in really good shape. Fitness levels are exactly where we need them to be to run 2 mile here on Tuesday. We can probably overanalyse the barriers for the Melbourne Cup. Ultimately, it's a 2 mile race and there's a long run to the first turn. So, yeah, our guy's always going to settle midfield or beyond. I don't think it'll be a problem. We're not going to get a significant amount of rain, I don't think, on Tuesday. I think it'll be a perfect track and that'll be fine for us.
So that was Danny O'Brien talking about Vow and Declare. Let's get along to the final horse in the race, which is Youngstar. She's a mare, a 5-year-old mare. Chris Waller, Tommy Berry. Again, a nice lightweight with just the 52 kilos. And I found this horse, Jason, really hard to line up. The run last year was good, but this year, was I in the same frame of mind? I don't know.
I don't think she's a winning chance. I don't think she's a serious winning chance. Her odds reflect that. But if you're wanting a horse at bigger odds that finishes top 5 or top 10, I think she's a great bet on that score. She ran well last year. Chris Waller again has targeted the Melbourne Cup this year with her. You can see that in her preparation. She's had the runs on the board. And the most recent performance in the St Ledger behind Hush Writer was very encouraging. I think the track conditions will be okay for her. I think she's a really good top 10 chance, and if you want to get a bigger price, just a sneaky top 5.
I just don't think the quality of this race is, you know, the performance. She's going to have to step up so much to be a contender. She was a Queensland Oaks winner last year. But for mine, even on her 6th placing last year, she needs to improve out of sight. I can't entertain her as a winning chance.
Some of these horses, once they're proven at the distance, so if they get the distance, that's half the battle, isn't it? So I think top 10 is a very realistic chance.
She's just going to be, you know, parked in behind. Tommy Berry will just let everything unfold and hope to find the back of the right horse when the race gets serious. I agree. I couldn't back her to win. but I definitely could back her to finish top 5, top 10.
We spoke of Dan O'Sullivan earlier, and he got involved and helped us out with the speed map, and we've also got some tips from him as well. Have a little look at these. You can see Dan O'Sullivan 23, Vow and Declare at $11, Downdraft 18, Finch in his selections, as well as Surprise Baby. Now we'll catch up with him a little bit later on during that live coverage of the Melbourne Cup. Let's have a final look at the market and see if we've talked you into any of these horses, and if we have, what odds you're going to get. Final thoughts?
Well, you guys might be trying to convince me on Downdraft, and I see Dan's got it in his...
Stick to your guns! Oh, Dan's got it in, yeah, $81.
No, I'm just going to leave you out. But for mine, I'm going to just rely on that Caulfield Cup form. We're looking at prices, and you're seeing there that Finch is the favourite at $8. I just think it's a safe play in the race, so he's the horse I'm going with.
A couple of movers, again, just watching overnight, and Thad touched on there, but Downdraft and Magic Wand are horses that have shortened from sort of $25, $26 into their current prices of $19. So just speccing at odds to make the prices shorter. So there is some background support for both horses 14 and 15.
What about selections? How are we spending our $100, Jason?
I'm dead set with Cross Counter again. I think he can make it 2 Melbourne Cups in a row. I think he's a classy animal that is a very sneaky preparation from Charlie Appleby. I think he's going to be wound up and peaking for today. So he's on top. Surprise Baby will run well. New Zealand bred horse. Finch and also Downdraft are the others that I have in 4. But from a play perspective, I'll be backing both Cross Counter and Surprise Baby.
I reckon Finch will be wearing in... there you go, there's your numbers.
Oh yeah, and I'll also box a Quinella and include Vow and Declare. Could put half the field in like a trifecta or a first 4, but if you've got a little bit more to spend, then don't leave out those numbers there. Screenshot numbers, screenshot with your phone if you can't remember them.
Aidan, what about for you?
I was going to say, I think Finch will be wearing an all-black jersey by the end of the day. We'll be claiming him as one of our own with Chris Waller, the Kiwi boy, the Foxton boy come good, winning a Melbourne Cup. I just think that the run out of the Caulfield Cup was superb. You're getting Kieran McAvoy on, who's just one of the great Melbourne Cup jockeys. So I've got Finch on top, really rate Murder Glass. I've got Cross Counter in there as well as Jason, and Constantinople in the mix as well. So really putting my eggs into that Caulfield Cup basket. The way I'm playing the races, I'm putting 40 a win on Finch, and then I'm backing $15 a win on Murder Glass. Cross Counter, Vow and Declare, and Constantinople.
Well, the big question is, where's Rostropovich? I know.
Well, he'll get like a $1 or $2 of my own, but I'm not going to suggest to viewers to be bet.
Okay. And finally, my selections. I've gone pretty straightforward. I've gone with Finch as well. Just thought it really mapped perfectly for Finch. Loved the run in the Caulfield Cup, and I just thought that this horse was prepared beautifully by Chris Waller. He's just been the master of taking out a big race, and it was exactly what he had in mind with Finch. Prince of Aran, I think it'll run a really honest race. Constantinople, can't really leave that horse out, and Vow and Declare, very, very eye-catching in the Caulfield Cup as well. And now you're going to ask me for my strategy. Gone with a trifecta, $100 for 166%, pretty much put in the field. Playing a long, wide, slow game.
So Downdraft can't run first or second for you to get your money back.
Yeah, I think he's going to run a solid race.
Third.
Yes.
Or fourth.
Yeah, that's the plan. Let's catch up with Thad now. Back to Thad. And Thad, what have you got for us?
Yeah, look, it's just probably the story is Murder Glass has continued to ease, guys. Out to $9 now, which we wouldn't have expected on Saturday night. So bookmakers really taking a stand against the Japanese horse. Even coming out of that Caulfield Cup, you'll see $9 now. It was $8.50 when I was on here earlier. The horses that have moved, Finch, we've obviously touched on, our new favourite, 10 into 8. Couple of odds here, and a couple for Aidan O'Brien. Magic Wand, who a lot of think will be the pace influence in the race, 26 into 18. Some people suggesting it might be a bit of a bunny in the race, but that's obviously not the case with this money now. See Magic Wand there, $19 currently, not 18, sorry. And also Il Paradiso opened up at $18, or got as high as $18 in final field markets, are now into $13 around Il Paradiso. The other one they don't mind is the local, Surprise Baby. Some very, very good form last time out, obviously, and that was $18 into $13. So there's some movement in this market, as you'd expect, but I guess the story is the Japanese runner and bookmakers really willing to take a little bit of a liability around the Japanese horse.
Thads, what support has there been for New Zealand sort of angled runners like the Chosen One? I noticed you got pretty short.
Yeah, look, Tom Waterhouse didn't do us too many favours yesterday in Melbourne, to be honest, Jason, when the call of the card backing the Chosen One. It was on the drift out, and we thought it was all going to be quite comfortable, and then slap bang wallop it's back into sort of 40s and 50s. So look, I would suggest if you are a Chosen One fan, maybe wait until a little bit closer to race time. I think that if that price is going to go anywhere, it will ease out slightly, but in saying that, it is a horror result for the New Zealand TAB. I know you guys hate hearing about the worst results in the book. I can give them to you in order if you like. The Chosen One, Twilight Payment, 81 into 41 is the second worst result in the book. Prince of Aran, Geelong Cup winner Michael Walker is our third worst result. And Murder Glass now with that drift, the money's still coming from our Kiwi customers, as our fourth worst result. But obviously, as you'd imagine, the Chosen One, far and away the worst result here at the New Zealand TAB.
Is there much action in Tom Waterhouse's New Zealand TAB account there?
No, we didn't. We weren't taking on any of that, and certainly, yeah, we've seen enough of the Chosen One support from our loyal Kiwi customers. So no, we've left Tom on his own there. They're going to have to sort it out over there, guys.
Thanks, Thad. It's been great to have you on the show, and no doubt we'll catch up with you later on today.
Thanks, guys.
So Thad Taylor there, and of course we did highlight a little bit earlier on in the show the free bet, $2,000 worth of bets, $500 for you to spend taking my top pick, Aidan's top pick, Jason's, and of course the Shark as well. And we're going to announce the winners of that competition now. Jason's pick, Johnny Miller, has $500.
All the best to you, Johnny.
On cross counter. Aidan Scott Hamilton has Finch, $500.
Might well be.
Yeah, well, if not, let's hope we get an All Black type result.
He normally played 14 though, not 11, did he?
True.
Charlene Wright has my pick, which is Finch. Good luck, Charlene. And we've got Downdraft. Karen Johnson has the Sharks pick. Go, Karen. So
yeah, well,
there
I'm
we
saying
are.
Go, Scott. Let's hope we can get you home.
$500,
Yep.
$2,000 worth of bets. The most important thing out of the show today is get involved. Have a bet. Get to your TAB store, head on the app, head to the website. So many ways to play and enjoy the Melbourne Cup. We'll be here all day, and we'll be getting you through the Melbourne Cup Carnival, and of course getting you through those domestic races as well. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to catching up with you later on today.